Hi, my name is Jennifer, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm kicking off my August reading wrap up. We're about 2 weeks into August at the moment. Before I start with the books I've been reading, I thought I would give you my brief thoughts on the Booker long list, which was recently announced. I actually haven't read any of the long list, which I feel like is quite unusual. I feel like I've normally read one or two. At the point the long list is announced, I haven't read any or DNF'd any yet. So we are with a blank slate. My library has 6 of the books in physical copy, 1 on format, which is not bad. It's much more than they had last year. So I've joined the queue for all of those books. I'll be picking one up tomorrow. That's exciting. The book I'm most interested in from the long list is Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein, which my library doesn't have. I may possibly submit a purchase request because it is the one that sounds the most me out of all the books on the long list. If you are interested in my early winner prediction, based on nothing at all, my prediction is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. Anyway, on to the books that I've read so far in August. And we got off to a great start with The Days of Abandonment from Elena Ferrante. So this is translated from Italian by Anne Goldstein. So I've been meaning to read some Elena Ferrante for a while. This one was not on my radar at all. It was first published about 20 years ago. But I heard Monica from Dogged Musings talk about it and it sounded really intriguing, so I thought I would check it out. I will link Monica's channel down below, so please check it out if you haven't already. So I loved this book. So we follow Olga, who is a married woman with 2 children, and at the start of the book her husband tells her that he is leaving her for another woman. And what follows is we see how Olga deals with that abandonment. So it's told in first person narration and it is very, very claustrophobic. It feels very stifling. You are, completely in Olga's mind as she is going through this turmoil, as her sort of thought pattern is becoming increasingly erratic. I sort of sped through this breathlessly, and I love it when a book does that. I just thought it was so well written, really evocative, just really intense as well. So I absolutely loved it, and I'm really looking forward to reading more Elena Ferrante. Next I picked up one of the most hyped books of the year, and I thought it was just okay. And it's Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. So, in case you don't know what this is about, what is the character's name? Athena and June. So, Athena and June are kind of friends, and one day, right at the start of the book, Athena dies. She chokes to death, and June is with her when this happens. And June, they are both writers, and then June takes the opportunity to steal a manuscript that is lying around in Athena's home, and then publishes it and passes it off as her own. So the book looks at the publishing industry, who has the right to tell what stories. It looks at racism, social media and trial by social media, and all of that stuff is interesting. However, I felt like once you get the message of the book, which you get early on, it felt very repetitive. It felt like it didn't go anywhere for a long time. The characters felt flat to me. The main character, June, is unlikable, which is fine. I like an unlikable character. So she is racist. It's first person narration, so we hear her thoughts. And so the book that June publishes and that she's stolen from Athena is about Chinese labourers in World War One. Athena is of Chinese descent. June is white. And so there's a lot about, as I say, who has the right to tell which stories. June tries to sort of excuse herself from having stolen the manuscript because she has made some changes to it, she's made some amendments to it, so she sort of feels like she has a right to publish the story and to the acclaim that comes from it. She doesn't tell anyone that she has stolen the manuscript, but then people start to be suspicious, and then there's this whole like thing on Twitter. Anyway, yeah, the characters felt flat to me, and this is sort of marketed as a bit of a literary thriller. It's described as a thriller on the quotes on the back, and it does have the overall framework, structure and plot of a thriller, but it was not thrilling for the most part. I almost DNF'd it at the halfway point, and then I looked at some reviews and I was like, everyone loves this book, so I did keep going. And it does get more thrilling towards the end, but the thriller aspect of the book is nothing remarkable at all. Quite paint by numbers in terms of its thriller aspect. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I will read average thrillers that are entirely forgettable, and that's fine. Like, there's a place for that. Sometimes that's what I want, that's fine. And I do think that it's difficult reading a book that has had so much hype, for that hype not to influence your reading experience in some way. So if I had not heard any hype about this, potentially, I mean, I probably would have DNF'd it, to be fair, but apart from that, I might be saying it was a fine thriller, you know, it was looking at some interesting themes, which you don't see explored all that often, fine. But I do feel like I've sort of read a different book to everybody else. I don't get the hype, really. So maybe I feel like I've like missed something here, but this was just okay to me. Then I read A House with Good Bones by Kingfisher. So this is quite a short little book, and I love this cover. I love these end papers. This is about a woman called Samantha who goes back to her family home where her mother still lives. Her grandmother has died. And around the home, I'll read the first sentence actually, because I feel like this is a really good first sentence. First sentence is, there was a vulture on the mailbox of my grandmother's house. So there were these like vultures around, slightly creepy undertone. And yeah, eventually weird things start to happen. So I did like this in the end. Sorry, that's the cat trying to batter down the door. What the hell was that? Now she's sneezing. So, yes, my issue with this is, okay, this is selling me a creepy gothic book. I have read Kingfisher before. I read What Moves the Dead, really enjoyed it. For the most part, this wasn't creepy. The creepiness doesn't kick in until later on. The tension doesn't kick in until later on. The tone of the book, for most of it, fell off with what I felt like I was expecting based on the cover. The main character, Samantha, makes these sort of witty remarks. It's a bit like, you know, side eye to camera, witty remarks, which is fine. She was mildly irritating to me, but whatever. But it made the tone of the book, to me, just feel light-hearted. And the balance fell off. I liked where it went. When we eventually get there, there's some good horror visual set pieces. So I did enjoy it overall, although I will say I feel like it's probably quite forgettable. I would read more by Kingfisher, particularly because I really like the other book of theirs that I read. But yeah, that was that one. Then we do have a DNF. This is a book I decided to DNF just today. This is Biography of X by Lacey. I only read about 50 pages. So this was disappointing in the sense that I really, really like Pew by the same author. This one is a book within a book. So it's a woman who is writing a biography of X, who is her wife who's died. So X was an artist, was quite a mysterious, enigmatic person. not much was known about her background. She used various different names throughout her life. She never sort of said who her parents were. The reason I DNF'd it was because I got to a bit where it was starting to talk about American history, and it was going to go on for a number of pages from what I could tell. And I mean, it was quite dry up to that point, but when that started, I was like, I don't think this is for me. It does have like pictures in it as well, and it has like little footnotes. But I just found it too dry, which is a shame, but there we go. And then today I finished reading The Kraken Wakes by John Wyndham. So this was a buddy read with Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. I will link Alice's channel down below. This was a bit disappointing. I really like the other John Wyndhams I've read, in particular The Midwich Cuckoos, I think is brilliant. And this one, it gets off to a good start. It has a really interesting opening hook. So we have our two main characters are Mike and Phyllis. It's first person narration from Mike's viewpoint. They're a married couple, and at the start we see Mike having a conversation with Phyllis, debating how he's going to tell this story, because he is writing down this story of what they have experienced, what's happened to them. And, you know, it's like, oh, shall I start with the fireballs? Oh no, start with this. You know, so it drops these little things in that you're like, what is that about? And he's sort of debating where to start telling the story. So it does hook the reader in. It's a good start. My issue with this is it was quite boring, actually, for the most part. It was quite dull. What we get is sort of a global view of what is happening, obviously, across the world. So I won't say too much, but early on we know that these like fireballs are dropping into the ocean across the world. We know that like missions have been sent down into the sea to explore what's happening, and people just disappear. So there's stuff going on a global scale, but for all that it felt boring, and I think it was because we were too far away from the action. I feel like I would have preferred if we'd focused on like a part of that and had more detail, because it didn't really feel tense or uneasy really, despite this stuff that is happening. Yeah, it was just a bit boring. The ending, the end section, if you like, was a bit more interesting. But overall, it was just a bit dull. I really enjoyed buddy reading it with Alice though, and we had sort of fairly similar reactions, I think, to the book. So yeah, that's that. Hello again. I actually only filmed the first bit of my wrap up yesterday, but I have since read another book, so I thought, as I'm doing some other filming today anyway, I would share my thoughts on that book while they are fresh in my mind. And this is Such Small Hands by Andrés Barba, translated from Spanish by Lisa Dillman. This is a very short book. It's only about 100 pages long, and it is disturbing and creepy and weird. So, main character is called Marina, and she about 7 years old? Yeah, Marina is 7 years old, and she is in a car accident. This is right at the start of the book, and the car accident kills her mother and father. So Marina ends up in an orphanage. And then the book is really about Marina trying to fit in with the other girls who live at the orphanage. Parts of the book are told in a chorus voice from the other girls, so as in like we, and that really works to emphasise how Marina is separate from this group of girls. This book, it goes some weird and disturbing places, which I can't say too much about because it's very, very short. But as I was reading this last night, there was one or two moments where I was just like, wait, what's this? It is, I guess, looking at trauma and the impact of that on children, and it's quite disturbing. And there is an afterword as well. And the afterword, I don't even know who this person is who's done the afterword or why. By someone called Edmund White. There is no explanation as to who this person is or why they have done an afterword, but the afterword was really interesting as well. So make sure you read that after. I mean, I don't know if other editions have the afterword in, but really, really interesting. But do read that after, I think, reading the book itself. Yeah, super creepy. This will be a good one to pick up in spooky season in October. Yeah, it's like, it's one that will stay with me, put it that way. I liked it. Yeah, it disturbed me. Hello, it's now the 26th of August. It's a Saturday, it's a bank holiday weekend. So I wanted to tell you about my reading plans for the weekend because I have a lot of reading to do. But first, I'll tell you about 2 books that I have finished, and I also have my little mate with me here, the Sante. See how long she stays for before she runs off. So I did finish The Shards by Bret, Easton, Ellis. There we go. See you later. And I really, really like this book. I don't know what it says about me that I really liked a Bret Easton Ellis book. He is, of course, the author of American Psycho, which I have not read. I imagine it will be far too disturbing for me. But when I heard the plot of this, I thought it sounded like my kind of thing, and it absolutely was. So it's set in the early 80s in LA in this school following this privileged group of students. The main character is called Bret. The book is told from Bret's perspective, and it is the author inserting himself into the story. So this group of friends at this school, they are privileged, they are all fairly unlikable. And then this new boy joins the school called Robert Mallory, and Bret immediately takes kind of a dislike to Robert Mallory and is very suspicious of him, and we're not quite sure why, but Robert is sort of settling into the group of friends, and everyone else seems to really, really like him. The backdrop to the story is we have someone called the Trawler, who is a serial killer who is kidnapping young women, and then sometime after that their bodies are found. Also, we have some weird stuff happening, so people's pets are going missing, and also people's houses are getting broken into. But all that's happening is that furniture is getting moved around. So this stuff with the Trawler sort of like sits in the background to the novel. Bret as well is sort of struggling with his own feelings, his sexuality. He has a girlfriend who he's not super keen on, but he is sleeping with other men. The book is disturbing. It is probably at the limit of what I could read in terms of disturbingness. There is violence against humans, obviously, but also violence against animals. The violence isn't sort of continual throughout, it is occasional, but when it happens, it's horrific. It's not, as far as I can remember, it's not that we are witness to the violence as it happens. It's more that when a body is discovered, that is described to us in great detail, and there's some really, really horrific stuff in here. So be warned, it's not going to be for everyone. And yeah, it's definitely at the limit of what I could read. But I just really, really, I didn't like the disturbing stuff. But I just really, really like this book. It's quite long. It's like just under 600 pages long. It's, for a lot of the time, you're not quite sure where things are going, how things are going to fit together. And the characters are very unlikable. So which I like. I like unlikable characters. The characters reminded me a little bit of the ones in The Secret History by Donna Tartt. It's not like that book, but it reminded me of those characters because they're privileged, they're unlikable, except I thought the characters in The Secret History were really, really boring. I don't like that book. Whereas the characters in here I found really interesting for some reason. So yeah, I really, really liked it. I don't know what that says about me, but there we go. And then the other book I finished this yesterday, is Old God's Time by Sebastian Barry. So this is on the Booker long list this year. This is the first Sebastian Barry that I've read, and I really, really liked it. I think this is a very, very good book. So it's about a retired policeman. It's set in Ireland, and he goes to live in this sort of isolated location. There's a lot about him, his memories, him thinking about his family, particularly his wife, who we love very, very much, and that's really a central part of the story. One day, two policemen knock at his door. They are people who he vaguely knew as ex-colleagues when he worked in the police force, and they are revisiting an old case that he had some involvement in as a policeman, and yeah, we go from there. This book is very, very sad and disturbing in parts. Content warnings for sexual assault and for child abuse. Very disturbing and yeah, very, very sad. I thought it was really, really well written. I thought the main character, the retired policeman called Tom, he felt so real, and his emotions came through, and his sort of torment really comes through. There were points in the book where I found myself a little bit confused as to like where we were and who people were. I suspect that was just a me thing rather than a book thing, because that happens to me a lot when I read. But I thought this was really, really excellent. I would be interested to read more by Sebastian Barry actually. So let me know if you have read any other books by him and if there's any you would recommend to me. I think this will make the shortlist, and I think it's potentially a worthy contender for the winner. I say that this is the first of the long list I've read so far, but I think it's a really, really excellent book. So anyway, my plans for this weekend, it is a bank holiday weekend and today is Saturday, and I am home alone today and tomorrow, well, just me and the cat, so I have plenty of reading time. My library ordering has gone slightly out of control recently. I say that when I did my mid-year check-in, I think my main goal for the rest of the year was to read from my shelves. That has not been happening. So in terms of my library books, these books here, so here, the top right of this shelf are all library books, plus this one here, because we've got Overspill, plus these three. And these three books I have to read by next Saturday because they're due back at the library and other people have reserved them. So I can't renew them, I have to read them. So it's a good job it is a bank holiday because yeah, I need the time. So the books I need to read are Uncle Paul by Celia Fremlin. This is a mystery novel first published in the 50s, which has recently been republished by Faber. How to Build a Boat by Elaine Feeney. This is another one from the Booker long list. And also Penance by Eliza Clark, which is one I am highly anticipating. I've heard so many good things about it. So I have started Uncle Paul. I started that last night. I've only read, I'm on page 66. So what time is it? It's 6 o'clock. It's 6 p.m. on Saturday. And I feel like I have not made the best use of my reading time today because I did have a 3-hour nap this afternoon. But I feel like a nap is still a good use of your free time. But anyway, so I need to crack on with this. Really enjoying it so far. And then I think the next one I'm going to head to is going to be Penance, because if I have to hand this back to the library not having read it, I'll be very sad. So then I think I'm going to pick this up, and then How to Build a Boat. I feel like this might be a DNF, and I just say that based on flicking through and looking at the writing style, and I don't really like the font either. Is that a weird thing to say? Anyway, so I'll get to this last, but hopefully I'll get to this before Saturday. Other things I'm reading, I'm still listening to the audiobook of Pearl by Sean Hughes. I have like 2 hours left, so I need to finish that by the end of Sunday, I'm going to say, because then I need to start my next audiobook, which is an Ascension by Martin McInnes, another one on the booker long list. And that one's like 14 hours long, so I feel like I need to make a good dent into that audiobook this weekend. Before then I have to go back to work. That's my plan. Wish me luck. Hello, so it's now Monday, the 28th of August, I think. In the last 2 days, I have finished 3 books, DNF'd 2 books, and there is a third book which I have kind of DNF, but it's not really a DNF. I'll explain more in a bit. First of all, pleasingly, I was able to renew How to Build a Boat and Penance. When I selected them individually on my library app, it wouldn't let me renew them. And when I bulk renewed everything, it did renew these 2, but only by a week, even though there was definitely queues for both of them. So I don't know why that happened, but that meant that there was less panic for my reading. But I have still read a lot of stuff. So the first book that I finished was Uncle Paul by Celia Fremlin, and I really enjoyed this. So this is set in a seaside town. We have 3 sisters, they're all adults. The eldest one, Mildred, used to be married to someone called Paul. Her younger sisters at the time were quite young, because there's quite an age gap between them, so they referred to him as Uncle Paul, hence the title. Anyway, after Mildred married Paul, he was found guilty of the attempted murder of his first wife, and he was imprisoned. And that happened many years ago. So in the current day, we've got this seaside setting because one of the other sisters, Isabel, has gone on a seaside holiday with her family. The other 2 sisters have joined them for various reasons. And Mildred is staying in a cottage by herself. And then Mildred hears strange things going on. She thinks she can hear footsteps outside the cottage at night. And she is scared that maybe Paul is now out of prison and maybe he is coming for revenge. So for a lot of the book, the plot doesn't move along very quickly, which I didn't mind because I just really enjoyed the setting, the characters, the writing. It's written with quite a bit of a witty tone. I don't want to say it's funny because it's not like laugh out loud funny, and that's not like the overall tone of the book, but it does have a slightly witty tone to it in how it's written. Some of the observations that I thought were really good. The plot does eventually move somewhere. I did not guess where it was going. I will say that 1 or 2 aspects of the book are maybe somewhat far-fetched, but I didn't mind that at all, and I really enjoyed this. Then I finished the audiobook of Pearl by Sean Hughes, and I liked this. So this is on the book along list, and it's about a woman called Marianne who is looking back on her life, and in particular her relationship with her mother, who disappeared when Marianne was only 8 years old. So obviously that's had a significant impact on Marianne's life, and that sort of trauma has impacted on her and her behaviours. So it's interesting because we have Marianne as an adult like telling us this story, but because it happened, her mother's disappearance happened when she was only 8 years old, that's sort of through the eyes of a child and through what Marianne sort of was told at the time or understood to be the case at the time. But then Marianne now as an adult is reflecting on that, and it's really about Marianne trying to, I think, understand her mother better. At its heart, that's what the book is about. The book covers a lot of really difficult topics, such as loss, mental illness, self-harm, other things as well, which I won't sort of say because they're kind of spoilery, but do look them up. And there were certain chapters in the book and certain passages in the book that I thought were so well written, and that so sort of perfectly captured really difficult and complex emotions. I thought it was really poignant and impactful. There were other sections of the book where I found myself a little bit lost. I wasn't sure why we were where we were and who the characters were. I think the book is told out of chronological order. Because I listen to this on audio, my audio listening is quite sporadic. And so this is clearly my fault, not the book's fault. And so that's why at certain points I was a bit like, I'm not quite sure like how this fits with the rest of the story. But overall, I did enjoy it, and yeah, it's had an impact on me. I do think it's a good book. Side notes, what I did particularly appreciate is there's a kids cartoon from the 80s called Pigeon Street, which gets a mention in the book, which I very much appreciated because I used to love Pigeon Street. Anyway, yeah, I do think Pearl is a good book. I can see why it's on the long list. I've heard very mixed things about it, but I don't really understand some of the negative reviews because I feel like it's a book with quite a lot going on, actually. Will it make the shortlist? Maybe. I wouldn't be sad if it made the shortlist. So yeah, so that was Pearl. Then, what did I pick up next? Then I had a DNF, and this I think will come as a surprise to us all, because I DNF'd Penance by Eliza Clark. I know, I'm sorry. I read about 130 pages, so I gave it a good go. The reason I DNF'd it was because I was really, really bored. I was so bored. So what's it about? We've got the sort of the framing of the book is we've got a journalist who is writing an account of this crime that took place some years ago, where a 16-year-old girl was murdered by 3 of her classmates. It's set in the northeast of England, and so we've had transcripts of podcasts, we've had backstory, historical information about the town where it took place, we've had sort of interviews and narratives from some of the key characters, to the point that I read to. And that all sounds like it sounds like it should be my kind of thing, but I just was so bored. I was just bored. Maybe it gets somewhere interesting, but I was too bored to carry on. I'm sorry. Then I just wanted something easy reading and light-hearted, so I picked up The Do's and Donuts of Love by Abida Jaigirdar, which was great, and it was just what I was needing. So Abida Jaigirdar is the author of The Henna Wars, amongst other things, and I really, really like all of her books that I've read so far. In this one, we follow Shireen, who is 17 years old, living in Dublin. She is Irish Bangladeshi. Her mother and father own a donut shop where she helps out. And Shireen enters this TV competition. It's a baking show, so it's a bit like Great British Bake Off, but in Ireland and for young people. So Shireen enters the competition to get on the show, and she does get on the show, of course. One of the other contestants who gets on the show is Shireen's ex-girlfriend. I mean, what are the chances? So her ex-girlfriend Chris also is in this competition. And then there's another girl, Neve, who Shireen sort of strikes up a bit of a friendship with. So there's a few sort of like romantic interests going on. It, as with all of Abida Jaigidar's books, at least the ones I've read, it also looks at some sort of wider, quite difficult themes really, really sensitively and really well. So in this one, it's looking at reality TV and the nature of reality TV and how what the TV producers sort of present to us is not necessarily always the truth of what has happened. And also we're looking at sort of online trolling, because Shireen and Chris have these comments directed at them online saying things like, why are these contestants on an Irish baking show? They shouldn't be on here. And it was interesting how the other contestants as well reacted to that and sort of downplayed that. that sort of racist trolling. It was nice as well to see a fat protagonist. I thought that was really, really good. It was really just a very engaging, fairly light-hearted, but looking at some sort of difficult things as well, read, and yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Then, where did I go next? Then I started the audiobook of Ascension by Martin McInnes. This is another one on the book along list. And I did not get very far. I listened to a few minutes and I've stopped because I really find the narrator very, very annoying. So this, I'm not marking as a DNF because it doesn't really count as a DNF, but I'm not going to continue with the audiobook. At this point in time, I don't think I can get it from either of the libraries any other method, but if I can, you know, I will do so. But the narrator was so annoying, and one of the things that she was doing was you could really hear her take a big breath at the start of every sentence, and it was really frustrating. It sounded like Geri Halliwell sounds when she sings. She does that thing. If you've never noticed that before, you will notice it now if you're ever listening to Geri Halliwell. Anyway, the narrator was too annoying for me to continue, so I'm not listening to that. And then this morning I picked up How to Build a Boat by Elaine Feeney, another one on the book along list. I have DNF this one as well after about 20 pages. I think it's just not for me. So it's about a young boy, what's his name, Jamie. He's 13 years old. I'm presuming he has autism. His mother died when he was born, and he wants to create a perpetual motion machine to reconnect with his mother, or to connect with his mother. I didn't really like the writing style. So there's bits of it where it's told, so where the sentence is sort of split up over a number of lines, which I don't necessarily mind when it fits the book. But for me, it just wasn't fitting with the story. So, yeah, I'm just not that interested in that one. Then, so that's everything I've finished so far. I will tell you what I've started reading. I've started reading Mrs. S by Kay Patrick. I actually asked the library if they would purchase this, which they kindly did. I'm only 36 pages in, but I am very much enjoying this so far. So I will check in with you shortly. For you, it will be about 10 seconds time. But I'll check in with you at the end of the month and let you know what else I have read. It is now the end of August, and I have finished Mrs. S by Kay Patrick, and this was a 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. I am, well, as you've watched this, I will have uploaded an individual book review video of this, which I'll link down below. So do check that out for my full thoughts. But briefly, so this is set in a girls' boarding school in England, and our narrator is the newly appointed matron of the school. And she develops a fascination with Mrs. S, who is the headmaster's wife. And the book is very little plot, although stuff does happen. The book is very little plot, but it's really about the development of their relationship. It's around identity, sexual identity, but gender identity, and butchness as well. That's discussed a lot in the book. The writing style is a little unusual, so it's not going to be for everyone. It doesn't have speech marks. The speech sort of runs on from one another, and it gives the novel quite an intense atmosphere, which I really, really loved. It was just wonderful. I loved it so much. So do check out my full thoughts in my individual review video of this one. So that's the end of the month. That was a pretty good reading month, I think. Let me know what you've been reading. Let me know what the best book you read in August was. And let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Bye.